What happens when a quiet neighbor gives his time to others only to be fined, harassed, and blocked from his own driveway? He stays silent until he doesn't. What he did to her garage left the whole block speechless. You ever do something good, something kind, and expect just a little bit of peace in return? Yeah. Me too. It was 6:38 p.m. on a Thursday, sun bleeding down into the cracked asphalt of Clover Ridge Lane, and I had one thing on my mind: getting home, setting down the groceries, and checking on Miss Ella before her soap operas started. She lived alone, sweet lady, pushing 80, with one good hip and two bad knees. Her son? Moved to Tampa and forgot she existed. So I picked up her meds, her groceries, and every now and then brought her that chocolate pudding she pretended she wasn't supposed to have. That woman could guilt-trip the devil, and I loved her for it. So I pulled into her cul-de-sac like I always do, left turn, roll up slow, window cracked, earth, wind, and fire humming just enough to make you feel like you're still alive. And that's when I saw it. She was parked in my spot. Now listen, I ain't one to get petty over concrete and paint. But when you own your house and you've paid off every inch of that mortgage with sweat and overtime and back pain, your driveway is sacred ground. That's your landing strip. Your badge of honor. Your peace. And there it was, a white Tesla Model Y with HOA committee vehicle printed in small vinyl letters on the bumper like it meant something. Right across both lanes of my driveway. Not crooked. Not temporary. Parked like she built the house her damn self. And standing next to it, like a hawk perched over a rabbit's grave, Karen. White polo shirt tucked into khakis like she ran Homeland Security, clipboard in one hand, iced coffee in the other, and a phone strapped to her hip like she was waiting on Langley to call. I pulled up, stopped short, rolled down my window, and smiled like my mama raised me. "Hey there, Miss Karen," I said real slow because I knew the game. "Think you might have landed in my driveway." She didn't even look up at first. Scribbled something on that clipboard like she was writing up a search warrant, then turned her head sideways and said, "Oh, you live here?" I blinked. "Yes, ma'am. Same house I've been living in for 15 years. Same driveway I poured with my own two hands." She gave me a half smile, one of those bless your heart but not really kind of looks. Well, there was no reserved marker and the HOA manual doesn't list this as a protected drive zone. "We're doing a routine inspection." "A what?" "A landscaping compliance check," she said, sipping her coffee. "Your lawn has some inconsistencies." I looked at my lawn. Was it perfect? No. But it wasn't raggedy. I mowed it every Saturday, trimmed the edges every other Sunday. I even planted mums last fall just to keep the color pop in spring. Inconsistencies? I repeated. "Lady, I water this yard with a garden hose older than your Tesla." That's when she pulled out the pamphlet. One of those ugly HOA flyers that looked like it was printed at a county fair. She tapped the paragraph that read, "All visible lots are subject to impromptu inspection under Clause 7C. And since we can't see your backyard without aerial coverage," she added, "we parked here to document curbside view." I felt something shift in my chest, one of those slow burns that starts behind your ribs and climbs into your throat. "Karen," I said, "I'm gonna ask real plain. Can you move your car?" She sighed like I had interrupted a state secret. "We'll be done in 20 minutes. I suggest you take a walk or something." Now look, I'm a grown man. I've worked 3 jobs. I buried both my parents. I put a nephew through trade school and still got enough left in me to be kind. But what I don't do, what I never do, is let somebody act like I don't own what I built. So I parked across the street. Sat there. Waited. Watched her strut around my yard taking photos of my bushes like she was scouting for snipers. 20 minutes turned into 40. I went inside, unpacked groceries, called Miss Ella. She said, "Tell that woman to go on somewhere before I call Jesus myself." I laughed, but not really. When I came back out, Karen was gone, and so was my peace. Because the next morning, she was back. And the morning after that. Same spot. Same story. HOA inspection. Like I was living in some gated prison yard and she was Warden Barbie. I filed a complaint with the HOA. No response. I went to the next meeting, room full of folding chairs and plastic cookies, and tried to speak. Karen cut me off. "This isn't the time for personal grievances," she said, full smile, eyes dead. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Wanting a fine. Driveway appears unregulated. Compliance required within 14 business days. Let me say that again, my own driveway on my own damn land was now considered non-compliant. And the cherry on top? Karen filed an anonymous request for property boundary review. I called the city. They said it was under evaluation. Meanwhile, every time I came home from work, that Tesla was sitting there, glowing in the sunlight like it paid taxes. She even had the nerve to start leaving notes on my windshield. Grass exceeds height regulation. Driveway surface uneven. Exterior trim color violates HOA palette. Trim color. I painted that house the same warm beige my father used in 1984. You know what beige is? Safe. You can't offend nobody with beige. Beige is the color of church walls and pancake mix. But Karen? She had opinions. Then one night, it got real. I came home after a long shift. Rain was coming down sideways and I had a busted bag of groceries in one hand. As I pulled up, I saw her. Karen was standing under an umbrella blocking my drive again, clipboard in hand like I was trespassing on her soul. Evening, I muttered, stepping out. She looked me up and down. Still haven't addressed the mulch violation, I see. The what? Your mulch. It's too dark. Doesn't match neighborhood aesthetic. Now y'all? I can't describe the level of restraint it took not to laugh so hard I passed out. My mulch. Too dark. Now I knew. This wasn't about rules. This was personal. She didn't like me. Didn't like how I looked, how I talked, how I existed. It wasn't the parking. It was me. And in that moment, something in me cracked open. Not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that wakes you up. Because if Karen thought I was gonna bow down over mulch, baby, she had the wrong one. What happened next changed everything. You do not want to miss how this unfolds. Stay with me because the real storm's about to hit. Let me tell you something my daddy once said while patching a roof with a hammer in one hand and a cigarette in the other. People don't take your land, Jacob. They take your boundaries. Inch by inch until you're boxed in and clapping thank you like a fool. I didn't understand it back then. I do now. By week 3 of this mess, Karen had turned my quiet little corner of the world into a chessboard, and baby, she moved like she thought I was a pawn. And I'll be honest with you, I tried to play nice. I really did. But you can't negotiate with someone who don't see you as human. See, Karen didn't just block my driveway anymore. Now she was on a mission. Monday morning, she showed up with a measuring tape and 2 HOA volunteers, retirees in matching polos with clip-on name tags that read Parking Committee. You ever seen grown folks measure someone else's grass like it's a crime scene? They walked around my yard like detectives. One of them even crouched down and pulled out a ruler. That's when I stepped outside. Can I help you gentlemen with something? One of them looked up like I had interrupted sacred business. Sir, your lawn exceeds the HOA height regulation by 2/8 of an inch. We'll be issuing a citation. I blinked. 2/8. 2/8 of an inch. I leaned on my porch railing, eyes narrowed. Y'all out here measuring grass blades like it's national security? The shorter one gave me that HOA smile, polite but hollow. We're just doing our part, Mr. McClellan. That's when Karen appeared. Clipboard in hand. Of course. She looked me up and down like I was mud on her loafer. You've been given multiple warnings. If you'd like to contest the citation, you can file an appeal next quarter. Next quarter? I said. That's 3 months from now. Karen nodded, smug. Correct. You can also request a special hearing if you cover the processing fee. And how much is that? She smiled like a crocodile on a sunny rock. $200. $200. To argue about grass. Now I ain't no fool. This wasn't about rules. It was about power. She was poking the bear just to watch it twitch. And twitch I did. That evening, I went to see Miss Ella. She opened the door with that same warm grin. What they doing to you now, baby? I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because if I didn't, I'd scream. Karen measured my lawn and fined me. Miss Ella blinked slow. You mean with tape? I nodded. 2/8 of an inch. That woman set down her walker like she was about to grab a bat. Oh no. See, I grew up when folks had the nerve to hide their foolishness. Now they make you pay for it. She patted my hand. You keep being kind, Jacob. But don't let em bury you just cause you quiet. That sat with me. All night. Next morning, I woke up to the sound of drilling. Loud, high-pitched, metal on metal. I threw on jeans, stepped outside, and nearly lost my mind. Karen had hired a contractor to install a temporary HOA signpost right in front of my driveway. Not on the sidewalk. Not by the mailbox. In front of my driveway. The man drilling was in a yellow vest. Looked confused. I couldn't blame him. Excuse me, I called, walking up. What's this? He wiped his forehead. I was told this was communal space. Told by who? Karen stepped out from her porch like a Disney villain with a fresh coat of lip gloss. This area's under committee jurisdiction until the land survey is completed. I filed it last week. I raised an eyebrow. Without asking me? It's not your jurisdiction, Mr. McClellan. Oh. So now I was Mr. again. I looked at the contractor. Brother, you want a glass of water and a chance to stop drilling before this gets legal? He blinked, looked from me to her, back to me, then turned off the drill. Look, ma'am, I'm gonna need paperwork before I continue. Karen turned redder than a sunburned tomato, but he packed up and left. I stood there in the sun, heartbeat in my neck. And that's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with a petty woman. I was dealing with a petty woman backed by a petty system. Because 3 hours later, I got an email from the HOA board. Due to recent disruptions, you are temporarily suspended from attending future HOA meetings pending investigation. Investigation of what? Trying to protect my own house? Let me tell you what happened that weekend. Saturday morning, I hosted a community cookout. I invited everyone, families, kids, veterans, retirees. Folks came out with lawn chairs and lemonade. We grilled ribs, passed around potato salad, played old school music. It felt like home again. Until Karen showed up. In a blazer. On a Saturday. Holding her phone like a weapon. She stood on the edge of my yard and yelled, "This gathering has not been approved by the HOA." People stopped mid-bite. Kids paused. The music dipped. I walked over real slow. "It's a family cookout, Karen. You gonna find me for barbecue sauce?" She didn't blink. "You're violating noise levels and communal traffic standards." Traffic? We got 5 cars and a tricycle. She pointed to the street. "You've blocked access." I looked. No one was blocked. Not even close. She pulled out her phone and started filming. "This will be submitted to the board." I turned to the crowd. "Y'all hear that? We're under surveillance for cooking ribs now." Laughter broke out. Miss Ella hollered from her chair, "Then make sure she gets a plate." Karen huffed and walked away. But the damage was done. Because by Monday morning, I received a formal violation notice. Unauthorized public assembly. HOA Code 11C. I laughed. Out loud. In my kitchen. Alone. But I wasn't laughing inside. See, something had shifted. This wasn't just Karen. This was a system of people so addicted to control, they'd rather weaponize bylaws than talk like human beings. And here I was, just trying to live in peace. But when peace gets priced out and your dignity gets written off as non-compliant, you start asking yourself real questions. What am I willing to take? And what am I willing to protect? I didn't have answers yet, but I had one thing. Resolve. Not anger. Not revenge. Just that deep, still kind of fire that don't go out once it's lit. Because Karen could mess with a lot of things. But what she forgot was, I built this house. I know every nail in that driveway. And I don't lose what's mine. Not to a rulebook. Not to a vinyl sign. Not to a smile that don't reach the eyes. This is it. Everything you've waited for, it's right here. Stick around, because what happens next? It flips the whole game. You ever reach that point where you ain't mad no more, you just done? Not tired. Not loud. Just done. That's where I was. I wasn't pacing the floor. I wasn't yelling into the wind. I wasn't praying for patience or plotting petty revenge. I was sipping black coffee on my porch, 4:42 a.m., stars still blinking like they didn't know Karen existed, just done. The sun hadn't even cracked open yet, and I was already staring at that white Tesla like it owed me child support. There it sat, smug in my driveway like it paid the bills. And across the street? That vinyl-sided empire Karen called a house, sleeping sweet under her HOA flag like nothing ever happened. But let me tell you how God works with quiet men. He don't send thunder. He sends clarity. And clarity walked into my life wearing steel-toed boots and a tape measure. It started that morning when I called Reggie. Reggie's been my brother since high school, grew up fixing forklifts, now runs his own contracting crew out of Eastgate. Always says people trust the guy with the clipboard, but they fear the one with the toolbox. I told him what I needed. No drama. Just facts. By noon, he showed up in his black Ram with 3 guys, a laser level, and a city zoning map the size of my kitchen table. They didn't knock. They didn't wave at Karen. They just measured. Quiet, respectful, thorough. And Karen? She noticed. Oh, she noticed. 3 minutes in, her screen door flew open like a courtroom gavel. Excuse me? What's going on? Reggie didn't even look up. City lot verification, ma'am. Who authorized this? He finally turned. The owner. She blinked. The HOA. Reggie cut her off with a smile. Ain't got nothing to do with this perimeter, sweetheart. It's municipal property law now. And right there? Her smile cracked for the first time. Because she didn't expect that word law. She expected another letter, another appeal, maybe a tired sigh. But she didn't expect blueprints. Or permits. Or clipboards held by men with sunburnt forearms and zero time for her drama. She stood there for a second, hand twitching like she couldn't decide whether to film or file a complaint. Then she turned and slammed the door. Reggie and his crew worked all afternoon. They found something Karen never thought anybody'd look for. Turns out, that garage of hers? The one she used to store her HOA signs and lawn spray and 5 crates of useless bylaws? That thing was 6 inches over the property line. Not 5. Not 3. 6. And baby, in city code? 6 inches might as well be 6 miles. See, Karen's garage was built by the previous homeowner before the zoning maps got updated. It had never been recorded properly. Karen just assumed it was hers. Just like she assumed my driveway was hers. My lawn. My time. My patience. But now? Now I had documentation. Certified. Stamped. Legally binding. I could have taken it straight to the city. Filed for removal. Find her. But that ain't how I operate. So I walked across the street. Calm. Measured. She opened the door looking like she just bit into a lemon. Jacob. I held out the folder. I figured you'd want to see this first. She snatched it like it was radioactive, eyes skimming fast. This isn't accurate. Oh, it is, I said, folding my arms. And I'm giving you the courtesy of seeing it before the city does. You got 48 hours to move that structure or file your own counter-survey. After that, it's out of my hands. She laughed high and bitter. You think this intimidates me? Nope, I said. I think facts scare people who are used to making up their own rules. Then I turned and walked away. Slow. Deliberate. Not because I wanted her to watch, but because I needed her to understand. The next 48 hours? Karen tried everything. She emailed the HOA. She called the city inspector. She posted in the neighborhood app about unlawful retaliation and threats to community order. But nobody moved. See, once the city records got updated, it didn't matter who she knew. The paper trail said what it said. And her little empire? It was sitting 6 inches too far into mine. By the 3rd day, Reggie came back, with his full crew this time. Karen tried to block the driveway. She stood there in her robe, arms crossed, like she could stop progress with sheer willpower. You are not authorized to trespass, she screamed. Reggie chuckled. Ma'am, we ain't trespassing. We're reclaiming. And just like that, his crew got to work. Piece by piece, that garage started coming down. Not with sledgehammers or bulldozers. With tape. With tools. With care. They unmounted the siding. Disassembled the frame. Stacked every board neatly. We didn't trash it. We didn't break a thing. We just removed it. By 2 p.m., the garage was gone. The foundation? Gone. Karen? Still standing in her robe, holding her HOA clipboard like it could raise the dead. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there silent, watching her authority get boxed up and loaded into the back of a contractor truck. And you know what? I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I felt peace. Not the kind that comes from winning. The kind that comes from finally being left alone. That night, Miss Ella called me. Saw what you did today. Wasn't trying to cause a scene. You didn't. You caused a lesson. I smiled. Sat back in my chair. Watched the stars blink over my now empty driveway. I just wanted my space, I said. You got more than that, she replied. You got your name back. And you know what? She was right. Because sometimes it ain't about noise. Or drama. Or making people pay. It's about reminding the world you ain't invisible. That your peace matters. Your land matters. Your voice matters. Even when the loudest folks in the room try to drown it out with rules they made up over lemonade and gossip. So yeah, Karen took my parking spot. But I took back my dignity. And that's worth more than concrete. You ever sit in silence and realize the noise you've been living in wasn't volume, it was disrespect? That's how I felt standing in my now clear driveway, coffee in hand, just listening. No Tesla humming like it owned the block. No clipboard tapping on my nerves. No citations flapping in the wind. Just wind chimes, birdsong, and the sound of my own heartbeat slowing down to something that sounded like freedom. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like breathing for the first time in months. I looked over at that spot where Karen's garage used to be. What was once a crooked structure full of papers and pride was now just a patch of dirt, humble as could be. No shame in it, just real life showing its teeth. And the whole street? They noticed. See, folks started talking again. Not loud. Not messy. Just quiet nods, porch waves, lawnmower glances. One by one, neighbors who'd been ducking their heads since the first HOA letter started looking me in the eye again. Miss Temple, 3 doors down, brought over peach cobbler and a story about how Karen once tried to fine her for drying laundry outside. Gregory from the corner, big dude, always wore headphones, said, "Man, I thought it was just me she was coming after. Turns out it wasn't just about me." Karen had turned the whole neighborhood into a gated stage play where she starred as director, judge, and security guard all at once. But now, the curtain was down. Later that week, the HOA sent out a newsletter, an actual printed one, folded in that cheap glossy paper like it was 1998. Inside, a soft-toned paragraph saying Karen had voluntarily stepped back from active duties and would be focusing on her personal affairs. No apology. No explanation. Just enough sugar to make it sound polite. But I didn't need a confession. The silence was enough. What I did need, though? Closure. So I did something I never thought I would. I walked across the street. Karen was sitting on her porch, arms folded, hair pulled tight like every strand was on trial. She looked up, surprised. "Jacob," she said flatly. I nodded. "Karen." She shifted in her seat, unsure of what was coming. "Just wanted to say. I don't hate you," I said, real even. "I just hate what you stood for." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak. "I built this house with my daddy's hands. I paid for it with late nights and early mornings. I've mowed that lawn, cleaned that porch, and helped folks on this block longer than you've been drawing diagrams." Still no answer. Just a long inhale. "I don't need to be your friend. I don't even need you to like me. But I do need you to understand you don't get to walk over people just because they quiet." She looked down, fingers gripping her mug like it had answers. "I was just following policy," she finally muttered. I nodded. That's what folks always say when they don't want to take responsibility. Silence stretched like old chewing gum. Then I turned to leave. "Jacob," she said suddenly. I paused. "I never expected you to fight back like that." I turned back and smiled, not angry, just tired. That's the thing about pushing people too far, Karen. You never know which quiet ones got roots under concrete. And I walked away. That Sunday, something special happened. The whole street came out, lawn chairs, folding tables, sweet tea, ribs, gospel music humming out of Gregory's speaker. Miss Ella in her floral dress, laughing with folks like she hadn't been stuck inside for a year. Kids playing chalk hopscotch on the sidewalk that Karen once called visual clutter. I watched it all from my porch, hands folded, heart steady. And it hit me, this wasn't just about a parking spot. This was about who feels welcome. Who feels seen. Who feels like they can just exist without asking for permission. And that matters more than any HOA newsletter or committee seat ever could. Later that evening, Miss Ella shuffled over to me with a smile. "You did good, baby." I smiled back. "Didn't do much. Just reminded folks we're not invisible." She chuckled. "That's more than enough." She reached into her tote and handed me something wrapped in napkin. It was a key. "What's this?" "To my old storage shed," she said. "Got a vintage smoker in there and a table your uncle built in '72. Figured you might want to throw the next cookout." I held the key like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Because sometimes the smallest gesture carries the most love. As the sun dipped low and the sky turned that soft orange-gray, I looked around one last time. Not just at the porch. Not just at the house. At everything. The driveway. The dirt where her garage once stood. The neighbors laughing, talking, healing. And me. Finally me. Still standing. Still home. Still whole.